she used the California law as background for her dismissal.
Blake Lively is having a complete meltdown after a judge shut down her most recent courtroom maneuver.
Huge risk, and so it's not a fair fight. They're going into this with uneven risks on either side.
She is now attempting to shield herself behind California's Me Too law in a bid to dodge the defamation case that she herself set in motion.
In this case, it looks abusive.
Meanwhile, Ryan Reynolds outright pressured his 7-year-old daughter into delivering an inappropriate line in Deadpool and Wolverine.
Basically looking at his 7-year-old and being like, well, if you're not going to have what it takes to read this line, which happens to be about, you know, Wolverine's penis, then I'll just go find another actor. Total sicko, the exact opposite in my view.
At the heart of this bizarre spectacle sit allegations of harassment, volatile defamation battles, and a justice system struggling to determine how to interpret a newly minted law as Hollywood celebrities play victims with their personal stylists on standby.
As expectedly filed to be dismissed from the lawsuit against her. Her argument that she is presenting is that the lawsuit in and of itself is illegal, okay, because the matter at hand is pertaining to sexual harassment.
It all escalated following California's newly enacted Me Too statute, officially designated as Code of Civil Procedure Section 47.1, which took effect January 1st. 2020.
Me Too law out here in California, Code of Civil Procedure 47.1, is a problem for the Baldoni camp.
How big of a problem is it?
And that statute, frankly, functions like protective shielding for anyone eager to hurl accusations while avoiding the risk of a lawsuit snapping back at them.
She wants the court to use California law. That's her argument. And every federal court has to deal with these conflict of law issues that we call them.
Blake filed a motion to dismiss Baldoni's defamation countersuit, wielding California's shiny new Me Too shield law her weapon of choice. A statute feels like granting someone a free hall pass to accuse you of wrongdoing, then slam the courtroom door in your face when you try to defend yourself.
And they want us to believe that Justin Baldoni is the creep in all of this. This is running parallel to him shouting at Justin Baldoni in a penthouse about his wife being uncomfortable.
And it works because Baldoni is now forced to establish actual malice, meaning he must do more than show a lie. He has to demonstrate she knowingly acted with harmful intent. Good luck pulling that off in court when the legal version of gaslighting is officially shielded by statute.
California law relative to the lawsuit against Lively for defamation is a little problematic. So we have not seen the opposition yet that the Wayfarer parties are going to make to the motion to dismiss filed by Lively, but I suspect that they're going to want New York over California law. We'll see what they do.
But is it valid though if the judge says yes, you can use California law in this instance? Could they dismiss his case because of that?
And this is not merely about defeat, because if he fails to prevail, he must cover her legal costs, likely extremely high fees plus punitive damages and possibly treble damages, meaning he not only loses his reputation, he loses his money, his business, and quite possibly his desire to ever speak publicly again afterwards permanently.
The real problem for him and our concern for Baldoni is if he goes forward and he loses his countersuit, based on defamation, there's a huge risk to him because he then has to pay Lively's attorney's fees, treble damages, punitive damages. It's a huge...
Blake's team in the most gacy maneuver of the century claimed Baldoni himself admitted she believed her own narrative. That's it. That's the entire argument. She believed it, therefore it can't be malicious, right? Because delusion suddenly equals legal innocence.
Requires Baldoni to prove a higher burden than he would otherwise have to prove in this defamation lawsuit. So he actually has to show that Blake Lively's, anything she said, any communications she made about SH, that they were made in malice. And so that's a higher standard that he has to prove.
The public isn't buying it. Everyone sees this for what it is, a Hollywood powerhouse, not some underpaid assistant, using laws meant to protect vulnerable victims as a shield. Laws designed for those without a voice are now wielded by people with red carpet handlers and brand deals. The optics? Absolutely disgusting. It's like watching someone use a food bank donation box to store their leftover caviar.
It's a problem that wouldn't be there if they had done this lawsuit a year and a half ago. So this is a brand new law. And what it does is it requires Baldoni to prove a higher burden than he would otherwise have to prove in this defamation lawsuit.
But you know who really needs to be dragged through the mud? Ryan Reynolds. Yes, everyone's favorite charming, quick-witted Twitter thread. But underneath that polished PR smirk lurks something a little darker. Enter the unhinged cherry on top. The Deadpool dad disaster.
Then the jury has to look at the totality of that evidence and say, is that malice? And there's certainly evidence that would lead one to believe a jury could find that.
Reynolds casts his 7-year-old daughter in the next Deadpool film because, of course, Deadpool is exactly the place you want your kid making her acting debut. But hold up, it gets worse. Much worse.
No person, I don't care how funny you think you are in Hollywood, would want their precious daughter, of all people, to make comments about Hugh Jackman's penis being in their father's.
One of the lines involved a remark about Hugh Jackman's anatomy being in her father's mouth. And no, that isn't a joke I invented. It was literally the line, and the child refused to say it because she was 7 and still had a working moral compass. But what did Papa Reynolds do? Did he say, okay, sweetie, we'll skip it? No, he told her that if she wouldn't say it, he would recast her, effectively threatening his own daughter. Blackmail framed as parenting behavior.
To investigate any further because there is no father in his right mind who would want a scene in which his daughter makes a, I guess, homosexual joke about the relationship between him and this Wolverine character who we're starting to have questions about their relationship in real life.
He openly admits this on recording, presenting it like a quirky joke, as if emotionally pressuring your own child to say something inappropriate in a superhero movie is peak dad humor, and then director Sean Levy casually adds that they made her repeat the line dozens, even hundreds of times, hundreds of takes of a child delivering something that unsettling, which stops feeling like filmmaking and starts sounding disturbingly like psychological warfare.
Looking at other people to play.
Yeah, but Ryan, to our discredit, we made Nezzy do I'm not you 70 to 500 versions of that line.
I'm gonna pay for that later.
Here is where it turns darkly absurd. The same man, a Hollywood symbol of dad jokes and aviation gin branding, has the nerve to brand Justin Baldoni a predator, running around repeating the label while pressuring his own daughter to say crude lines on camera for laughs. If irony had a body, it would swing hard at him without a shred of self-awareness.
And that's what he says. So he kind of basically forced his daughter to do the line, or else he's going to replace her as an actress in this movie. She's 7 years old, you guys.
And then there's his 12b-6 filing. Most legal motions are dry, procedural affairs, but not Ryan's. His read like a full-on courtroom roast. Hostile, aggressive, over the top, like he was trying to win points for sarcasm rather than make a legal argument. It didn't even feel like a lawyer had written it.
No, it won't get dismissed at the 12b6 phase because Brian Friedman will be able to plead around by doing a second amended complaint, and he'll be able to outline, the claims of actual malice and that she wasn't reasonable when she reported this harassment.
It honestly reads like Ryan sat down and thought, asterisk, let's craft the meanest, most self-righteous pile of court garbage ever. Asterisk, and mission accomplished. He didn't just aim to get the lawsuit dismissed. Oh no, he wanted to publicly humiliate Baldoni while doing it.
Points that a judge decides, those are not legal determinations, those are factual determinations, and we leave all of our factual decisions to a fact finder. In this case, that'll be a jury. So Brian Friedman more than likely will get past this phase.
The guy whose Deadpool persona literally seeps into his parenting and legal tactics is not a hero, no matter how slick the PR spin. He treated his own daughter like a prop, turned a workplace dispute into a public smear, and weaponized his fame in ways that make his on-screen villains look like choir boys.
Hey, when I want your opinion, I'll take Wolverine's out of your mouth.
That's kid. Guiltily, that is my daughter, Inez.
I'm so sorry we have to admit that.
And I am Father of the Year over here for allowing her to say such lies.
Exactly. Ryan Reynolds' quirky, lovable underdog act is peeling away fast. Behind the smirk and snark lies a Hollywood powerhouse playing offense, turning workplace disputes into public drama, weaponizing his fame, and dragging his own family into it. His PR persona might sell gin and superhero flicks, but off-screen, it's a full-blown villain origin story.
Just unbelievable. He is admitting that she was not, Nezzy, as she is called, was not comfortable doing this line. And Ryan essentially said to her that I'm going to find another actor, which is pointedly ridiculous.
Exactly. That funny, charming guy persona evaporates once the cameras are off. Behind closed doors, Reynolds reportedly flips the script, raging, manipulative, and vindictive. Those accusations against Justin Baldoni weren't about justice. They were about power, control, and intimidation. Hollywood's version of Mean Girls and Reynolds? Regina George in a tailored designer suit, throwing shade and calling the shots.
Reynolds' statement, as contained in the allegations, is that he went and called Baldoni a predator. I mean, that is just such an over-the-top statement, and it does, just in its own right, seems malicious.
Exactly. Reynolds taking his Deadpool antics off-screen and into knife pool territory is a whole new level of creepy. He basically turned a supposedly satirical, sleazy character into a caricature of Justin Baldoni. Claiming it's just art doesn't erase the fact that he weaponized his movie persona to mock and intimidate someone in real life. That's Hollywood power meets personal vendetta.
The Deadpool scene, the nice pool scene in Deadpool, would be relevant here. I think that backs up the whole idea of malice and what the intent was of Ryan Reynolds in the statements that he was making. Whether or not, you're not going to be able to get every little interview that Ryan Reynolds ever did where you try to kind of show that he's a bad character. A lot of that would not come in.
Exactly. That's not clever satire. It's targeted harassment wrapped in Hollywood glitz. Using a billion-dollar franchise and a parody character to publicly humiliate someone while also dragging them privately and legally? That's pure malice, just with a very expensive makeup budget. It's power, PR, and personal vendetta all rolled into one.
This is what we call character evidence, and it's trying to impugn someone's character based upon their past acts in unrelated matters. But if it becomes a focal issue in the case, the judge will let certain evidence in so the jury can see that.
Exactly. Every quip, every smirk, it's all carefully staged. What looks like harmless sarcasm or a playful jab is really just a rock thrown with full intent, while he sits back and watches the fallout. It's performative mischief with real-world consequences.
Now he admitted, you're talking about Nice Pool, and now he admitted that Nice Pool was based on Justin Baldoni, which shows that that must be actual malice.
Exactly. This isn't just a he said, she said tabloid story anymore. According to Baldoni's team, the New York Times didn't just cover Lively's claims. They allegedly collaborated with her ahead of time, shaping the narrative before her official complaint even existed. That's like writing a Yelp review for a restaurant you haven't stepped foot in yet. Emails, metadata, pre-release drafts. All of it is emerging as hard evidence, showing a level of coordination that goes beyond ordinary reporting. This turns the whole situation into a calculated PR operation, not just a news story.
And the arguments that Blake is making and that he is making in the CRD complaints against Justin Baldoni.
And here is the truth: this type of coordination destroys the fair reporting privilege the Times usually shelter behind, the one claiming we're merely reporting filings, don't sue us. Because when you are in the kitchen preparing the entire story, with the source before facts ever touch the page, that is not journalism, that is publicity, not the ethical version, but calculated reputation damage wrapped in paperwork designed solely to pretend absolute neutrality for the public record.
He can defend himself all day long. We want to make that very clear. If he gets past the 12B6 phase, which we anticipate he will, he can vigorously defend himself with any and all facts that are in the case. The problem happened was when he sued her for defamation in response to her claims of SH against him, which triggered the new Me Too law, which was effective January 1 of 2024 in California. And boy, is it a concern in my mind for the Baldoni camp.
Brian Fredman, Baldoni's attorney, wasn't messing around. Legal experts have described his filings as phenomenally precise, and for good reason. He's systematically tearing holes in this so-called neutral reporting and pulling the New York Times directly into the legal fray. For once, the mighty Times might not be able to hide behind the shield of mere reportage. They could actually be held accountable for actively contributing to the demolition of someone's reputation.
Brian Friedman won't come out and say that publicly. I mean, they would probably wait until a court told them they couldn't bring that case forward.
California law may ironically end up favoring Baldoni here, even as that same statute undercuts him in Blake's bid for dismissal. But consistency is rarely afforded in cases like these. The courts will have to determine whether the law applies evenly to both Lively and the Times, though it likely won't. Hollywood routinely picks sides, and if you think Ryan and Blake lack media levers to pull, you're being naive about power, influence, and access.
So if New York law were to apply versus California law applying, that would also change my analysis, because maybe the New York law, I'm sure the New York law is much more friendly on the Me Too issues than California law is.
Stephanie Jones, the so-called queenpin of PR chaos, has turned this whole mess into a masterclass in betrayal. Her firm, Jones Work PR, was officially supposed to represent Wayfarer, Justin Baldoni's company. Instead, she allegedly chose to play double agent for Blake and Ryan, collecting inside info for her own benefit. According to the lawsuit, she got hold of confidential communications by confiscating the phone of her own employee, Jennifer Ale, just before Ale left the firm in August 2023. Subtle? Hardly.
Of that dancing scene. I mean, that was a huge moment for me to see that Blake Lively's claims appeared to be misstated, overstated, just wrong. And of course, the text messages as well. So I think there's a lot of...
And this wasn't about simple screenshots at all. Jones allegedly had security, legal counsel, and even a forensic data expert on standby, turning it into a full extraction mission. And guess what conveniently surfaced inside Lively's CRD complaint and that NYT hit piece? Yep, the same messages and documents, except now altered. Because nothing screams credibility like a digital trail of manipulated records handed over after a corporate-style phone raid.
Imagine that she would file the CRD in California in order to strengthen her argument that California law should apply, because this code section that we have is so liberal for protecting any communication about SH.
Stephanie Jones built her reputation on being feared in Hollywood. She handled A-list clients like Dwayne Johnson, Lauren Sanchez, and reportedly even Tom Brady. But now, one by one, they're distancing themselves. Why? Maybe Hollywood finally realized that the person you hire to manage a PR crisis shouldn't be the PR crisis. Once untouchable, she's now untouchable in the opposite direction. No one wants to get caught in her blast radius. And here's why this matters. All the theatrics Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively tried to sell the world, painting Baldoni as some manipulative, creepy power player, are crumbling under the weight of receipts, leaks, and insider testimony.
I would really focus in on Ryan Reynolds. I mean, he's a deep pocket. It sounds like he said something very, it was a strong statement to call somebody a predator. That's going to be for the jury to determine if, that leads to the level of defamation and leads to damages.
And yet behind the scenes, their crew engineers, press attacks, leaks, tweaked texts intimidates kids with recasting threats and brands colleagues predators among their powerful Hollywood friends.
It does, just in its own right, seems malicious. And it's one thing if it was based on some true statement, some conviction or something like that. But to walk around calling other people a predator, especially in Hollywood, where, the Me Too movement was so huge and it's such a hot topic.
Reynolds didn't just wield his influence. He armed his PR team, the media, and even his own wife, then acted shocked when the fallout became obvious. He didn't just play Deadpool. He became him, sarcastic, ruthless, and brutal, but in real life, there are no camera cuts. The people he harms don't get a sequel to respawn in. There's nothing funny about destroying someone's reputation, using your own child as a pawn, or feeding journalists edited documents. There's nothing heroic about threatening people behind the scenes while smiling for the cameras.
Gratuitous that wasn't in the initial script, and what they're perfectly fine with. And you add this to the fact that he slapped a child extra gratuitously, that all he believes is riffing. Now you're hearing from the director of his film that they made the 7-year-old do this line from 70 to 500 times.
So when Reynolds throws around the word predator, remember, this is the same man who pressured his 7-year-old daughter into delivering sexually explicit lines, mocks coworkers in billion-dollar blockbuster films, and hides behind jokes while targeting anyone who dares to defend themselves.
But rather than just using an AI tool for his daughter or using a voice actor for her to say that line that she was uncomfortable saying, he basically says, oh, well, I started looking at different actors and actresses. And then that's when she said, I do want to do it. wildly manipulative to do to a 7-year-old kid.
Exactly. The real predator here isn't the person defending themselves. It's the one orchestrating the narrative, making sure their version of events dominates before the truth even has a chance. Enter Ari Emanuel, the guy who practically built WME from the ground up, wielding power like it's a divine right, shaping careers, deals, and reputations with a flick of his pen. Hollywood runs on influence, and Emanuel has long been the puppeteer behind the curtain.
He can defend himself all day long. We want to make that very clear. If he gets past the 12B6 phase, which we anticipate he will, he can vigorously defend himself with any and all facts that are in the case.
Exactly. Ari Emanuel has long been the poster child for unchecked Hollywood power, the ultimate kingmaker. But even he isn't untouchable. His crown started slipping the moment he weaponized loyalty, using it to fire Justin Baldoni for no legitimate professional reason. It's a perfect example of how influence in Hollywood can become a double-edged sword. One wrong move, and the puppet master suddenly finds themselves under scrutiny.
He fired Justin Baldoni because he could, and he was made fun of him. Baldoni, Baloney, whatever his name is, I'm loyal. And I'm loyal to Blake Lively, and I'm loyal to Ryan Reynolds, and so I just bossed it and fired him for no reason.
Exactly. There was absolutely no professional justification. No misconduct, no breach of contract, nothing. Just a personal vendetta wrapped in Hollywood loyalty. Ari Emanuel basically admitted it himself on that mysterious, never-aired Freakonomics podcast. I can do it, so I did it. That's not power. It's pure pettiness masquerading as authority.
None of those things, but I'm powerful and I'm Ari Emanuel. My brother's Rahm Emanuel, and he bankrupted Chicago, and we've been acting like gangsters, and so we're just gonna fire Justin Baldoni. Well, he did that, and now it looks like he's being pushed out up and down.
Exactly. Saying it casually like it's a badge of honor basically painted a giant target on his own head. By admitting the firing was loyalty-driven rather than professional, Ari Emanuel basically handed Baldoni's legal team a golden piece of evidence. Yep, it wasn't about misconduct or performance. It was personal. That offhand quote could end up being worth millions in damages claims.
He was the most powerful person in Hollywood. Another reason why I believe that Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively felt so confident in everything that they were doing, because they had this guy behind him and they knew that he would just fire someone on a whim or on an allegation.
Exactly. A $25 billion takeover isn't just a business move. It's a cinematic level you're out for Ari Emanuel. Getting forced out of WME after wielding that kind of power for years? That's not a resignation. That's a cosmic mic drop. Poetic justice served cold.
Ari Emanuel, Mr. Baloney Baldoni, is no longer the CEO of WME Endeavor.
Exactly. Ari went from kingmaker to spectator. The very system he controlled is now moving without him, and he's just watching the dominoes fall. That's Hollywood karma showing up in Armani and heels, serving a cold, unmistakable message.
Like another one of Blake and Ryan's dragons is going down. He's been accidentally slayed.
Exactly. Ari being out removes the protective buffer Reynolds and Lively relied on. Without him, all the behind-the-scenes favors, whispers, and loyalty-based sabotage have less cover. Baldoni's case gains serious momentum because it now exposes the raw power dynamics, personal grudges, Hollywood cliques, and billion-dollar stakes masquerading as justice. It's high school drama with corporate-sized consequences.
This guy out as a condition of them doing this $25 billion deal. He now will still be chairing, so he will obviously have some capacity of power still, sitting as a chairperson of WM.
Exactly. The so-called "we didn't lie, we just didn't tell the whole truth" defense is basically a legal wink at lying by omission. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. With each revelation, this lawsuit is peeling back the glittery facade of Hollywood, showing a tangled mess of manipulation, power plays, and personal vendettas. What started as a workplace dispute has morphed into a full-blown exposé of how influence, loyalty, and celebrity can be weaponized, and how quickly a carefully crafted public image can crumble.
You think Baldoni and his crew should shift to just vigorously defending themselves against Blake Lively and maybe consider dropping the defamation claim now?
Exactly. It's a textbook case of hypocrisy wrapped in charm. Reynolds' public persona as the witty, self-aware good guy completely collapses when you look behind the curtain. Using fame, industry connections, and PR firepower to manipulate, intimidate, or humiliate others, while simultaneously claiming moral high ground, doesn't make someone brave or heroic. It just exposes a dangerous blend of entitlement, delusion, and abuse of power. The contrast between public image and private behavior here is staggering.
To me, what they view as harassment, what they view as forcing someone to do something, an extra gratuitous that wasn't in the initial script.
I get what you're pointing out, but it's important to frame this carefully and responsibly. What many people are reacting to isn't the existence of the law itself, but the perception that it's being strategically leveraged in a way that goes far beyond its original intent. California's Me Too related protections were designed to lower barriers for genuine victims who historically lacked power, resources, or credibility, not to function as a preemptive shield for wealthy, well-connected figures against any form of scrutiny or countersuit. When accusations appear tightly synchronized with PR rollouts, when selective disclosures raise questions about context, and when career-ending consequences hit one side long before a court ever weighs evidence, it naturally fuels skepticism. That doesn't automatically invalidate claims, but it does justify public curiosity and media pressure to ask harder questions. The shift you're noticing is less about denying victims and more about demanding consistency, transparency, and proportionality, especially when those invoking victim-centered laws are themselves backed by immense influence. In that sense, what's unfolding looks less like a clear-cut morality play and more like a power struggle dressed in the language of justice, and people are increasingly unwilling to accept a narrative at face value without seeing how it was constructed.
But once you start saying that somebody's a predator, you're doing it because you want to harm them, and it just feels very malicious.
Exactly. When you piece it all together, the leaks, metadata, internal emails, and public statements, it forms a pattern that suggests a strategic orchestration rather than spontaneous, heroic action. Fame and media influence are being leveraged not just to tell a story, but to control perception, silence dissent, and push a narrative favorable to them. That's why the unfolding scrutiny is so intense. The public and media aren't just evaluating individual claims anymore. They're looking at the systematic use of power and PR to shape outcomes. Once the machinery of secrecy and influence starts to unravel, the illusion of innocence or victimhood collapses, revealing the mechanics behind the manipulation. It's less a scandal about one incident and more a case study in how celebrity, power, and media can be weaponized.
But what we're talking about is the countersuit for defamation, and it's because California law puts a big barrier and a big risk on the Baldoni side for that. They might accept that risk. They might say, that's fine by us, we're willing to move forward.
Exactly. This is the point where the Hollywood machine starts to falter. All the carefully crafted narratives, PR spins, and courtroom theatrics can't fully suppress the hard evidence and leaked receipts anymore. Reynolds' charm, Lively's legal shields, and Ari's boardroom influence are losing their grip, and for once the public and the courts are seeing the story beyond the red carpet gloss. Truth has entered the chat, and the next moves in this saga are likely to be unpredictable, messy, and potentially career-altering. It's a rare moment where Hollywood power dynamics are being held accountable in real time, and the drama is far from over.